Amorim on the brink of being sacked? What went wrong? Chelsea signing a Juventus star and Osimhen'S new club? All this and more in today's episode. Are you ready? Then let's begin. Ruben Amorim doesn't seem to be a magician, and Manchester United is a hopeless case. The Red Devils' hopes of returning to the elite are once again shattered against harsh reality. A ruthless clear out of deadwood and another rebuild costing a fortune are inevitable. Under the new helmsman, things are still stuck, and after another slap in the face, the Devils have received another dose of bitter pills. Amorim's honeymoon at Old Trafford ended before it even properly began. A humiliating thrashing by Arsenal was followed by a home defeat to Nottingham Forest, and now United are languishing in 13th place in the Premier League table. This is their deepest slump after 15 games in the club's history, as if someone had deliberately hit a new low of despair. And so, before that very game against the Nottingham Forest, Sir Jim Ratcliffe gave a candid interview to the fan publication United We Stand, admitting the obvious: the club is mired in mediocrity. United's minority shareholder laid it bare. To return to the elite, serious changes are needed. Well, thanks, Captain Obvious. We hadn't figured that out ourselves, watching this circus on the pitch. One serious change has already happened. Dan Ashworth was fired from his position as sporting director after just 5 months. But to restore the former glory on the green pitch, Amorim will need not just a suitcase full of money, but a whole shipping container stuffed with cash. And this is despite the fact that he inherited, frankly, a sad set of players from Ten Hag. United practically gifted Nottingham Forest the victory, making a whole string of unforgivable mistakes. Amorim is, of course, a breath of fresh air, but no matter how hard you try with your tactical intricacies, if there's no one to implement them, all your ideas are worthless. The Portuguese, to his credit, doesn't bury his head in the sand. After a draw and 2 wins at the start, the subsequent series of defeats didn't force him into a defensive shell. Not much quality heart, but we tried, he told reporters after the Nottingham Forest fiasco. We conceded twice and then rushed forward without much of a plan. We need to work on this, and it's a long road. It's not about individuals, but about the team as a whole. We concede from set pieces, even though we pay a lot of attention to them. We need to be better in everything. When asked about his mood after such a start, Amorim philosophically remarked, "I had a period like this at Sporting. Anyone who knows a bit about football knows that this happens to many clubs. We just need to keep working and improving the team. Things will change. It takes time and we need to keep grinding." But here, doubts creep in. The lack of collective interplay and the basic desire to fight tooth and nail for the badge, these are not things that can be fixed in a month. United seem to keep the ball more, but there's a distinct lack of sharpness in attack, and the defense cracks at the first sign of serious pressure. Amorim is clearly being disingenuous if he believes that a stable game can be built with this squad, and his admission about the lack of heart is a real alarm bell. It's no coincidence that he urged the players last week to run like mad dogs. Star names who don't earn their keep are United's main problem since Ferguson left. And that's the first thing that needs to change. No team becomes great without hard work on the pitch, and United are in 13th place, and in terms of distance covered, they're actually 16th. Sorry gentlemen, but you don't deserve anything if you're being outrun every week. The worst thing you can say about a footballer is that they're not hard-working. There are a few chosen ones who seem to be continuing to sink Amorim. Until he gets rid of the dead weight, there will be no progress, especially with his ultra-attacking 3-4-3 formation. Marcus Rashford is a prime example of a destructive element. Yes, he scored 3 goals at the start under Amorim, but he's a mood player who turns it on when he feels like it and openly throws matches with his body language and behavior when things aren't going his way. It's the same story with Garnacho. The potential is there, but at the slightest setback, he drops his head and runs to complain on social media. Captain Fernandes is also a piece of work. His emotions boil over, and instead of leading the team, he only irritates his teammates with his constant complaints to the referees. Getting rid of all 3 would be too radical, but no one should be guaranteed a starting place until they reconsider their attitude. And then there's the impressive mediocrity. Players who either aren't up to United's level or have lost their spark. Dalot plays every minute, while others, like Antony, bought for 85 million, Casemiro, the eternally injured Shaw, and the limited Lindelöf are just warming the bench and collecting their salaries. Amorim is paying the price for past transfer market failures. In the summer, United splashed out 200+ million on De Ligt, Mazraoui, Zirkzee, Yoro and Ugarte after Ten Hag received his ill-fated new contract. And you know what? According to ESPN, Ten Hag only insisted on De Ligt, and the rest were Ashworth's creations. Could that have been the last straw? Mazraoui looks like the only successful acquisition so far, Yoro has only just recovered from injury, Ugarte is in and out of the squad, and Zirkzee has only scored 3 times in 21 matches. The 2023 newcomers aren't shining either. Mount can't seem to find his form, Højlund is a raw forward who lacks a killer instinct. Onana has certainly improved after a disastrous start, but the blunders, like in the games against Nottingham Forest and Arsenal, haven't disappeared. Even the Butcher Martinez, who started so brightly at United, has slowed down recently. And how can you blame Amorim, who was thrown into this swamp? To pull out this band of misfits, you need to be not just a coach, but a real magician. Ratcliffe called Amorim smart and thoughtful. Absolutely. And he has plenty of charisma. He demands the maximum from the team and has already managed to leave his mark on Old Trafford in these difficult conditions. But United will remain a swamp of mediocrity until Amorim is given carte blanche to rebuild the squad in his own image. Ideally, this process should start in January, if the Red Devils still have any hope of clinging to the top 7 in May. Right now, the Champions League seems as far away as another planet. United are 8 points behind 4th-placed Manchester City, and this weekend they face a derby at the Etihad. However, Amorim is said to sense that City are in a slump, and if his team pulls itself together, gets rid of the childish mistakes, and snatches a victory, the situation might not look so hopeless. At the end of 2024, the Red Devils have some winnable home games against Bournemouth and Newcastle, and in between, a trip to relegation-battling Wolves. The season can still be salvaged, especially when the winter transfer window opens. And Amorim is the coach who deserves to be supported until the end. Or is he? Time will tell. And what do you think about this chaos at Old Trafford? Share your opinion in the comments. It would be interesting to hear your point of view, like if you're also tired of this hopelessness. So, Juventus is in a stalemate, and in London and Manchester, they're already sharpening their pencils, weighing up their options. Dušan Vlahović, who was supposed to be the new idol of the Turin faithful, is now a stumbling block and a headache for the old lady. The £70 million invested in him 2 years ago seemed like an investment in the future, as his potential was compared to Erling Haaland himself. And now, a salary like Pogba's before his unfortunate downfall, and the return. Well, let's be honest, it's not exactly championship-worthy. 9 goals in 17 matches is certainly not a disaster, but it's not the fireworks that were expected. Juve is no longer willing to pay such big bucks, and Vlahovic seems unwilling to compromise on his financial appetite. His contract runs until 2026, and here's the deadlock. Either sell now and recoup at least something, or wait and risk losing the Serbian for peanuts. A familiar tune, isn't it? Meanwhile, Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester United are looming on the horizon, ready to snatch up the escapee from the Italian swamps. Arsenal is desperate to find a true number 9, one with a cannon shot that hits the target accurately. Havertz is trying, Jesus flashes from time to time, but consistency is still missing. And here's Vlahovic, a guy almost 2 meters tall and with experience playing on the European stage. Do you think he can fit into Arteta's system? Or will he become another misunderstanding in attack, joining the ranks of disappointments like Pepe? In short, there's plenty to ponder. Chelsea's situation isn't any better. Jackson is trying, but he clearly lacks experience and a killer forward's instinct. Vlahovic, with his size and tenacity, could be the nail that the pensioners need to score when it matters most. But will he be another Morata or Lukaku, who just couldn't handle the level? That's the million-dollar question. And Manchester United, well, it's complicated there. Højlund is a promising lad, but he still needs to grow and mature, and Zirkzee isn't exactly setting Old Trafford alight. Vlahovic, in this case, is like an emergency aid called upon to relieve the Red Devils of their goal-scoring headache and give the young forwards a breather. But is United ready to shell out another hefty sum for a striker who, as we remember, also likes to count his money? And won't the Ronaldo saga repeat itself when the wage bill spiraled out of control? On the one hand, Motta, Juventus coach, is trying to defend his player, claiming that he contributes not only with goals but also in defense. But if you're a striker, you're expected to score goals, no matter how you spin it. And Vlahovic's nervousness, his inconsistency on the field hasn't disappeared. If Juve sells Vlahovic, they'll get some money of course, but they risk losing a player who might blossom elsewhere. It would be a shame if he suddenly exploded in the Premier League, wouldn't it? As for Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester United, their pursuit of him is both inspiring and alarming. After all, buying a player for 70 million is always a risk. And while Arsenal should consider where best to spend that money, maybe on midfield or defense, Chelsea and United should remember their previous blunders. Buying potential rather than a finished product is like playing roulette. You might get lucky or you might not. And where's the guarantee that Vlahovic won't become another transfer flop? In the end, it all boils down to one question. Is the game worth the candle? Are these clubs ready to take a gamble on a striker with great potential but an unpredictable character? And what will Juventus ultimately choose, caught between financial necessity and sporting ambition? Only time will tell. It seems like new horizons are beckoning for Gabriel Jesus, or rather, two of them. After his move from Manchester City to Arsenal, the Brazilian has, to put it mildly, faded. It's as if someone flipped a switch, and instead of a prolific goalscorer, we see a shadow of his former greatness on the pitch. He's lost his place to Havertz, who isn't even a natural striker. In 4 months, not a single goal or assist. Zero. Absolutely nothing. And this with a price tag of 55 million? Who would take a gamble on such a pig in a poke? It seemed like that was it. Jesus was definitively stuck in the London quagmire. But no, a glimmer of hope has appeared. Two silhouettes have emerged in the transfer window, ready to take the Brazilian under their wing. One is from the foggy Albion, the other from the Pyrenees. Newcastle, it turns out, is considering a replacement for Isak. Jesus is on the list of candidates. However, they say the Brazilian himself isn't particularly keen on treading English pitches again. Understandable, after such a spectacular performance. But Atletico Madrid, that's a different story. The Madrid air, Simeone's passion, all that. They're also planning a clear-out. Griezmann might leave. Correa's future is uncertain. And here, Jesus is said to be the ideal candidate. Well, we'll see. But Arsenal isn't planning to let go of their asset just like that. They want 50 million for a player whose goals column boasts an indecent 0. And yet, there will probably be some daredevils who'll take him for that kind of money. It can't be all that bad, right? For 25 million, it would still be a very decent transfer. Atletico is ready to take a risk, but not for crazy money. Logical, isn't it? Why buy a pig in a poke for a fortune when you can get it at a good discount? And this is where it gets interesting. How will the Gunners maneuver to sell their star, who seems to have lost all his spark? Atletico is clearly aiming for a bargain, and I doubt they'll pay more than the player's actual value. But on the other hand, they need a goal scorer, preferably with experience, not just some rookie off the street. Jesus seems to fit the bill. Although, after Arsenal, you can't be sure of anything. The Brazilian's contract runs until 2027. Arsenal has the right to stand their ground. They can certainly demand exorbitant sums, and then what? Will Jesus be stuck at Arsenal like a thorn in their side? Or will a team be found that's willing to pay for this pig in a poke? Simeone is of course a master at squeezing the maximum out of players, but even magicians make mistakes, as we know. Will Jesus take flight in a new environment, or will he remain a pale shadow of his former self? Will Arsenal be able to get a decent fee for him, or will they have to sell him for peanuts? Are we about to witness another transfer flop? It seems the most interesting part is just beginning. What do you think will be the outcome of this story? Who, in your opinion, will be the winner in this transfer saga? Share your thoughts in the comments. Yesterday, he was a god at the Parc des Princes, an icon whose name was chanted until voices were hoarse. And today, Kylian Mbappé, having moved to Real Madrid, is making even the most seasoned football experts scratch their heads. From a national favourite, a super scorer, a goal machine, he has somehow suddenly, as if tripping over nothing, turned into a kind of dark horse of the royal club. And it's not just at the club level. Look at the mess that's brewing. The guy who just yesterday was leading Les Bleus, the captain, the leader without any ifs or buts, first declares himself that he's not ready to join the national team. He says he needs to acclimatize, it's a new team, he needs to, prepare properly. Okay, understandable, it happens. But then he simply doesn't get called up. Just think about it. Mbappé, the captain of the French national team, is left out of the Nations League. It's as if the Eiffel Tower were suddenly removed from a panoramic view of Paris. Impossible, unthinkable, outrageous. And this is where the most interesting part begins, the guesswork. Is this a coincidence or a pattern? Tactical reshuffles by Deschamps. Seriously? Without Mbappé? Come on. Rumors started about some recent legal problems. Intriguing, of course, but where's the proof, as they say? So far, it looks more like a smokescreen to divert attention from something more, spicy. And then, after a month of silence, the hero himself appears on the stage. France is the most important thing for me, he says. Well, who would doubt it? But then it gets even more interesting. In September, it turns out, he asked for a rest. Genius, right? The national team captain asks for a rest during the international break. And in November, according to him, it's already the coach's decision. This is not just a disagreement, it's a whole storm in a teacup that could turn into a real tempest in French football. So what's the matter? Damn it, a conflict between the captain and the coach? Quite possibly, especially considering his choice to prioritize preparing for Real Madrid matches over playing for the national team. Not the most captain-like behavior, you'll agree. So he got punished, as they say. Harsh, but perhaps fair? Or maybe it's about the atmosphere within the national team. It's no secret that Mbappe's star status doesn't sit well with everyone. He underperformed in an important tournament, then he refused to go. Does he think he's better than us? A quite likely question in the locker room. And there you have it, a cold shower from Deschamps. Mbappe's future in the national team is now very much in question. Until spring, a pause, time for reflection, negotiations, and maybe even for a final break. Remember the story with Benzema. He was no pushover either, and the national team somehow managed without him. So there are all sorts of possibilities. Outrageous? Possibly. But in football, stranger things have happened. And here's another interesting point. Mbappé responds to the criticism. He says it's all because people need to talk about him at any cost. Maybe so, but it sounds kind of defensive, you know? It's the first time I've left France. I'm not there anymore. For you, a new context opens up. A new club, climate, environment. You discover all the feelings. It's more like an observation. Kylian tries to explain, as if he's turned into an exhibit under a microscope. And he concludes optimistically, I will succeed here. But so far, this success smells more like bitter disappointment. It's one thing to talk, another to do, especially under such a hail of critical arrows. So will Mbappé succeed in Madrid? Will he return to the national team as the undisputed leader? Will he be able to extinguish this growing serious fire around his name? So far, there are more questions than answers, and that, damn it, keeps us on the edge of our seats. What do you think? Write in the comments, share your opinion. Victor Osimhen is back on the radar of the top clubs. Manchester United, Arsenal, even those Parisian sheikhs at PSG, they're all eyeing him up. And you know what's the funniest part? Just a couple of months ago, this guy was persona non grata at Napoli. Remember that TikTok scandal when the club mocked him for a missed penalty and he, offended, held a grudge? There you have it, football drama in action. And now, this escapee from Naples is wandering in the Turkish club Galatasaray. On loan, you understand? Like an exile, waiting for his moment. But what's this clause in his contract that allows him to break free in January? Sounds like a script from some spy movie, honestly. Napoli, of course, are cunning, a €75 million release clause. That's no small change, gentlemen. But it seems Napoli's bosses wouldn't mind jettisoning some ballast after a disastrous last season. They say they need the money to patch up their holes somehow. These financial dealings, how they sometimes affect our beloved game. And Manchester United, those poor souls, are languishing at the bottom of the Premier League table. I think they've already given up hope of finding their goal scorer. Zirkzee and Højlund, their new recruits, haven't lived up to expectations yet. It seems their transfer strategy is like playing the lottery. And now, Osimhen, the hope of the nation, could be their lifeline. Remember how he dragged Napoli to the Scudetto? 26 goals in the league. The guy really knows his stuff. And although the Red Devils once turned him down, choosing Højlund instead, now it seems they've realized what they lost. Better late than never, as they say. On the other hand, have you ever heard of financial pragmatism? Napoli, by selling Osimhen, plans to revamp their squad. In other words, to make money off him and then spend that money on new players. But honestly, this relationship between the player and the club has turned into some kind of soap opera. The TikTok scandal, the loan, the release clause. It's starting to look like a full-blown Hollywood blockbuster. And now, Manchester United, with eyes burning, are preparing to shell out a hefty sum for him. Will they cough up the cash? Are they ready to take this risk? Because 75 million is a huge amount of money, especially considering their recent spending. Although, if you look at it from another angle, Osimhen has potential, he's young, and he could still shine on the field for a long time. And his transfer value could increase in the future. In essence, it's an investment for the future. But still, there's one but. Will he adapt to English football? Can he survive the tough tackles of the Premier League? That's the question. His exploits at Galatasaray show that the guy hasn't lost it, that he's still in form. But whether he can repeat that goal-scoring season at Napoli, that's a big question, you know. And now, Manchester United must weigh the pros and cons. To risk or not to risk? To give in to temptation? Which way will the scales tip? January promises to be hot. It's a battle for talent, for trophies, and, of course, for our emotions. What do you think, friends? Write in the comments, share your thoughts.